If what critics suggest were true, if popes, kings, or scribes decided to insert or alter passages in the scriptures while they were in one location, say Turkey, what will they do about the copies already circulating in North Africa? What about those preserved throughout Europe or other parts of the ancient world? To alter the text universally, they will have had to locate and modify every existing copy simultaneously, an undertaking that will have been practically impossible. But that has just backfired because the Bible is my favorite book in the whole world. And one reason for this is simple. I'm a Christian. My identity as one who aligns himself with Christ arises directly from Scripture's testimony. Yet, many objections are raised concerning the reliability, trustworthiness, and sufficiency of the Bible. Therefore, Abel Damina is my name, and all over the place I keep hearing these rumblings. The Bible was corrupted. The Bible is not the original one. This Bible you're holding cannot be the correct one. How are you even sure that this Bible you're holding is the correct one? All of this is all over the place.
Corruption means the Bible has been interpolated. There has something addition being done. So whether the addition corruption can be 10%, can be 20%, can be 30%, depending upon the percentage of corruption, the remaining remains quite.
This is not how we obtained our Bible. Modern translations are not the result of a long chain of translations layered upon one another. Rather, contemporary translators work directly from the original languages of Hebrew and Greek. Scholars and translation committees carefully study these ancient manuscripts, consulting earlier translations for comparison, but ultimately translating from the original texts themselves. Thus, the claim that the Bible is merely a translation of previous translations reflect a misunderstanding of the difference between translation and transmission. We are not dealing with a single literary work, but with a carefully preserved library of sacred writings. There are numerous philosophical, historical, and theological observations we could make about Scripture. However, the particular question before us concerns copies of copies. Do we still have the original author's work? The most recent books of the Bible were written nearly 2,000 years ago. Therefore, it is reasonable to ask, how do we know the text has not been altered or tampered with over time? This is precisely the point at which critics often raise objections. For example, a guy called David Cross.
One of my favorite things about the Bible is how antiquated all the things that are supposed to take place in the future are already. How all the prophecies, how completely antiquated they are. Because, you know, when the Bible was written, and then rewritten, and then edited, and then re-edited, and then translated from dead languages, and then retranslated, and then re-edited, and then re-edited, and then retranslated, and then given to kings for them to take their favorite parts out, and then re-edited, and then retranslated, and then re-edited, and then given to the Pope for him to approve, and then retranslated, then rewritten, then rewritten, re-edited, retranslated, re-edited again, all based on stories that were told orally 30 to 90 years after they happened, to people who didn't know how to write. I guess what I'm saying is the Bible is literally the world's oldest game of telephone.
Some critics argue that we cannot trust the Bible because it has been translated many times. Those who make such claims are either deeply misinformed or deliberately misleading. They compare translation to a game of telephone. But this analogy completely misunderstands how translations work. Every translation is made from the same sources. Anyone who studies Hebrew and Greek can examine those sources directly. In fact, there are software tools that allow scholars to compare translations with the original manuscript from which they were produced. When discussing manuscripts, we do not indeed possess the original documents themselves, largely because the materials on which they were written are fragile. However, we do possess thousands of manuscript copies. Today we have over 5,000 Greek New Testament manuscripts of portions of manuscripts. If that number does not impress you, it is probably because you are unfamiliar with ancient literature. Take Aristotle's Poetics, for example. We possess roughly a dozen manuscripts, and the earliest dates back more than 1,000 years. Aristotle's original. Consider Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars. Again, we have fewer than a dozen manuscripts, with a gap of over 1,000 years between the original writing and the earliest surviving copy. Perhaps the best example from classical literature is Homer's Iliad. We possess several hundred manuscripts, yet the earliest copies we have were written more than 2,000 years after the original composition. And yet people dare to question the reliability of the New Testament. If the Bible cannot be considered reliable by the standards used in historical scholarship, then no ancient document will ever be considered reliable, because none comes close to the manuscript evidence supporting the New Testament. No single individual or group could have exercised control over the biblical text at any one point in history. Consider the implications. If what critics suggest were true, if popes, kings, or scribes decided to insert or alter passages in the scriptures while they were in one location, say Turkey, what will they do about the copies already circulating in North Africa? What about those preserved throughout Europe or other parts of the ancient world? To alter the text universally, they will have had to locate and modify every existing copy simultaneously, an undertaking that will have been practically impossible. But that has just backfired, because the Bible is my favorite book in the whole world. And one reason for this is simple. I'm a Christian. My identity as one who aligns himself with Christ arises directly from Scripture's testimony. Yet, many objections are raised concerning the reliability, trustworthiness, and sufficiency of the Bible. Therefore, it is important to examine whether what we read today, both in the Old and New Testament, accurately represents what was originally written about Jesus Christ. This inquiry is not without complexity, because the Bible is not merely a single book. Rather, it is a collection of 66 books written over a span of approximately 1,600 years by roughly 40 authors across 3 continents and in 3 languages. The 2 primary languages of the Bible are Hebrew and Greek, with Aramaic appearing in smaller portions. Why should I believe the Bible? I choose to believe the Bible because it is a reliable collection of historical documents written by eyewitnesses during the lifetime of other eyewitnesses. These documents report supernatural events that took place in fulfillment of specific prophecies, and claim that their writings are divine rather than merely human in origin.